Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and you're probably wondering what the hell this monstrosity is. Well, it is a full list of all of the buffs and debuffs that appear in the game caused by skills, caused by passives, caused by items, caused by boss mechanics and stage mechanics. Literally everything in the game that triggers some sort of effect that has a box somewhere, whether it's next to your character's portrait or whether it's over your character's HP bar, over the boss's HP bar, etc. It is all calculated and shown, well, not calculated, but shown, displayed in this beautiful little MFF 5.3 all buffs list. A huge shout out to Ow Pink Chode Ow for putting this together, for creating this, for data mining this. All of the credit goes to them, and I'm going to be going through, I'm going to be zooming in and going through these with you guys. I'm obviously not going to be going through all of them because a lot of them are self-explanatory. Like if you just read, it says all attack. If you are also wondering how you can get this image yourself, I'm not sure why you'd want it, but if you want it, it's down below in the description. I'll link to the original Reddit post where Pink Chode posts it. And you can download it for yourself. So we're just gonna go through pretty quickly. You're gonna see, just before we get started, you're gonna see a lot of repetition. It seems that there are a lot of kind of buffs that are essentially identical. So it could say, let's say, HP increase by X, or it'll say X increase HP, which is basically the same thing. There are some that are different, and I'll point them out. So for example, there's increase of max HP, which is the same thing as HP increase, but it's increase of max HP later on. That's different because rather than gaining a certain amount of HP, you're gaining a certain amount of the max. So that's a little bit different. And of course, there's always a difference between flat numbers like increased crit rate, which would just be a number, versus a percentage. Now, I don't know how the hell you'd have an increased crit rate of a number, but I guess that would be a number that would then be converted to a percentage later on. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. I don't really know how the math works in terms of how the game interprets stats and how it calculates them, but I'm just going to go through all of these icons to explain what they mean, at least the ones that actually require explaining. Of course, decreased skill count, super important. Decreased debuff. Debuff is, I think, one that a lot of people get confused with. So they use the word debuff, but then they also use the word crowd control. They basically mean the same thing. These are any sort of negative effects that will do something to your character. So you're thinking like snare, bind, stun, freeze. Anything that slows you down or impedes you in some way would technically be considered crowd control. Even time freeze is crowd control. Fracture would be crowd control. Anything that puts a debuff on you, so it decreases that duration. So instead of, if you have 50%, instead of lasting 10 seconds, it's only going to last, whatever, 7.5 seconds. If you have 100, well, it depends on whether they calculate the 50% as 50%, which would make it 5 seconds, or if they calculate 100% decreased debuff duration as dividing it by 2, or, I mean, it wouldn't completely negate it. But again, I don't know how the game interprets these stats, but I just know what they mean. So you got a bunch of different attack stats here. You've got increased recovery rate. Now, increased recovery rate is interesting because this doesn't actually heal you. This just increases the amount that you will heal for if you do heal. Range increase is one that I want to point out because I made fun of Hawkeye for having it. He used to have it. They got rid of it. But he used to have a range increase as part of his, I believe, 4-star or tier 2 passive. He had a 3 meter range increase, which completely fucking useless. You got all the resists here. You got the all speed stuff. Going over to the second bar over here, we got the resistance and stuff. The decreased chain hit damage when attacked. It's really cool. They don't use it enough, but I really wish they would for PvP especially. You can find this on She-Hulk, I believe. I think she might be the only character that has this. Increased chain hit, so many characters have this. Gambit, Cable, Minerva, etc. The all speed can't stack is another interesting one. I would like to see more of this. I believe Scourge is the only character that has it. Guaranteed dodge, guaranteed crit. The increased buff effect, this is like Lizard and Inferno and Captain Marvel's tier 2 passives, which is pretty cool. The increased debuff effect is like White Fox's leadership and I believe Enchantress's leadership, and that will increase your debuffs against the enemy. So if you have 50% increased debuff and you land an all defense down of 10%, it'll be 50% more, so it'll be 15% minus defense. Counter reflect is what Rhino has and what the CTP of free to play has. We've got all attack decreases, all defense, HP. These are all like reductions, which are basically the opposite of the ones that increase the attack stat. These are just decreasing them, decreasing your crit rate. We don't see a lot of these very much. I don't think these are all ever used, to be honest. but they might be used on certain boss mechanics that are no longer in the game, but were at the time. And I'll point out some kind of antiquated buffs that I can tell are from specific World Boss Ultimate stages that we used to have. A little bit of history of Marvel Future Fight for you guys. We got decrease other stats. Again, they're just repeating it. You know, you have decrease crit rate decreased by X decrease of crit rate. It's essentially the exact same thing. Increases skill cooldown, which is interesting. It makes the game harder. You got some Dark Souls action going on there. Increases debuff duration. That would be the boss making the debuffs last longer on you, which is pretty cool. Lowering your attack stats and lowering your defense stats based on energy or physical over here. If we move over to... Whoa, okay, we kind of teleported here. If we move over to the third bar here, this recovery rate one is used in the Thanos World Boss Ultimate when he hits you, when he goes to the portal and he creates those purple lines, those lasers. Even though it's a flat number, they make the number so large that it basically gives you like a minus 1000% recovery rate. So it doesn't technically stop you from from healing, but it makes your recovery so low that it's basically zero, which means it's negative zero, like way lower than zero, way into the negatives, that you would be healing for nothing. So it's interesting that rather than making the stat or the ability an absolute, rather than just making it like no recovery or zero recovery or impossible to recover or whatever, to recover HP, they just make it a number. And then when they code it in the game, like for Thanos, for example, if you get hit and then you hold it and look at it, you'll see that it's like minus 15,000 recovery rate, and recovery rate's only like 250%, so it's obviously gonna nuke your recovery to zero. Range decrease, which is obviously super useful. You got the resistances from fire all the way down to mind, so it's reducing your resistances, reducing speed. Increasing chain hit damage when attacked. This is an interesting one. This would basically make it like you would die faster or the enemy would die faster. I've never seen these ones used before. Decreases effect, the decrease buff effect, and decrease debuff effect. Interesting. We got the Doctor Strange time freeze. Ignore defense used to be called defense penetration. It's got the same icon as ignore dodge. I don't think they use this one at all anymore, but it's still there. We've got the different status effects for burn through shock. Curse is an interesting one. It took me a few minutes to think about who this belongs to. This belongs to actually Black Cat. Her misfortune tier 2 passive applies a curse, which is pretty cool. Would love to see them introduce more curses, like Morgan Le Fay should have some curses. Sister Grimm should have some curses. It would be very, very cool. And have sort of like the more damage you deal, the more you heal back in terms of the curse value, sort of like Enchantress's second skill with that charm effect. Of course, ignore dodge. These summoned abilities, or these kind of things for summoned characters, these are all the tier 2 passives for characters like Maximus, Ultron, Kingpin, where it buffs the duration and the stats of your summons. We have, of course, Pierce and Type Penetration. Interesting that they separated the two. We've got, of course, the regular status affects that are kind of crowd control abilities: Stun, Fear, Freeze, Snare, Bind, Web, Invincibility. Purify, we're very familiar with. It's from PvP. Cancel. We've got Super Armor and All Defense. We've got Silence, which is not as popular as I think it should be, but it is still a thing. Going back up to the top here in the next one, we got Charm, Reflect, Blind, HP Steal. This is the one that I probably love the most out of all of the effects in the game. This is Blade's Leadership. This is the only time you'll ever find this in the game, and I really wish Netmarble would create more characters and more skills that have this property. I think it would be great to give a lot of combat characters HP steal. I think it could possibly become a new meta, because fighting giant characters with super HP, if you can steal their HP and heal yourself at the same time, super valuable ability. We got Entomb, which is Crystal's, I believe, 5th skill. We've got the Ant-Man and Giant Man getting bigger, getting smaller. We've got immunity to all debuffs. I don't think I've ever seen this one before. It's got this like quantum thing. Like I haven't seen this actual like icon here. Usually they just use the feather one, the Purify feather one, and they just add like 1,000 seconds to it for, again, Thanos World Boss Ultimate. We have immune to some sort of effects, like immune to cancel or immune to penetration, something like that. We've got all of the different immunities, like the base immunities. We also have invisibility. We have the dominance of spirit, also called mind control. Mind control is different from charm, different from entice, so that's why they have different names, and that's why this is a puppet icon. And then the charm icon, as you'll see later, is a blue background with a black heart. We've got all of the different reflects based on physical down to all of the elements. elements, sorry. We got the summon, we got frenzy buff, we got the revive buff for like Jean Grey and stuff like that. Reset cooldowns, that's really cool. That's like Luna Snow's like 1, 2, and 3, how they can reset. And Morgan Le Fay also has some skill resets where you press one skill and there's a chance to reset a different skill. We've got the sword damage. These are the ones that you use for like Coulson, or that you'll see for like characters like Coulson, support characters, that will increase your damage dealt against villains, and then decrease the damage you receive from villains. We've got immunity. We got reflect, which is just reflect. And then the enlarged one. Moving over to the next column, we've got more getting bigger, getting smaller. We got paralyzed, like Deadpool's 4th skill. We've got increased elemental damage. We've got guard break immune, which has again the same or a very similar icon to ignore dodge and ignore defense. We've got different types of shields. We've got this awaken one. I don't think I've ever seen this on a character before. Correct me if I'm wrong. All skills are enhanced when activated. I would love to know what the hell that is. We've got different types of accumulation. We've got this one, which I don't think we've ever used, but is amazing. Increases attack. Now, tell me which character this reminds you of. Increases attack by X for each 1% of damage taken. This is like a continuous or passive damage accumulation. The Hulk, anyone? This is the ability that we've been begging to have on the Hulk forever. The more damage he takes, the lower his HP gets, the stronger he should get. They definitely, desperately need to give this to the Hulk, give this to Red Hulk, give this to She-Hulk, give it 5 times to Hulkling, and give it to a few other characters because it's a super cool mechanic. And creating a situation where a character is at high health and they're weak but they're tanky, and then they get to low health and they're almost dead but they're like one-shotting you, is just a very, very fun mechanic to play around with, especially for PvP. And it could make for some super cool highlights in PvE content, like letting Galactus hit you until you're almost dead and then just fucking one-shotting that guy. This is the skill damage increase from damage procs, although it's from skills because the damage proc icon is different than this one. Next effect activates after X uses. This is like Magic's passive ability. Next effect activates after a certain number of hits. I think that is like... Or no, Hydro Man is the same as Magic, so I'm not really sure. Provokes to attack. This is Taunt. Very cool ability. I believe Luke Cage is the only one that has it. Again, another stat, another ability that they should bring back, a buff that they should reintroduce, especially now that we have multiplayer. Galactus, let me bring a character in who taunts, so that I can carry other players, or I can let them bring in fragile characters like Captain Marvel, and I can taunt and take damage and actually feel useful defensively, because not everybody wants to do damage. Some people want to turtle up and just absorb damage. We have decrease different types of attack incoming. These ones here are basically the same as the Coulson buffs and the sort of support passives, but these are the ones you'll see in Shadowland, where it says like increased damage dealt to male characters here, and then that would be a female-only stage. Or decreased damage received from speed types, and that would be on like a combat stage where your speed type characters would do 0 damage because of these buffs. Because these are buffs and they're not part of the stage mechanic, that's why Doctor Strange can take them away with his second skill debuff removal. Decrease co-op skill cooldown and increase. These are part of old World Boss Ultimate mechanics, and also the increase one is, or I guess the decrease one, I should say, is part of the striker list for characters like Odin. We have more accumulation here. We have like the standard skill bonus damage that every tier 2 has, basically. More accumulation, stat proportional to total damage, which is kind of cool, so you can get extra stats, not just attack stats, so you could possibly get like HP or something different if they tried to play around with this. Increase all elemental damage. That is, I think, Crystal's passive, I believe. Moving over to the next one, I know it's a lot, there's so many, there's like hundreds of buffs. This is an interesting one that we've never seen before on a character. Changes all skill to type. That's really cool. So you could have a situation where a character like Jean Grey is all mind damage, and then she uses her tier 3 skill, and then she changes all her skills to fire damage. I think that would be fantastic, but we haven't seen that just yet. Decreased damage received. We've seen this many times on many characters. Cooldown reset and setting it to a certain number of seconds. This is like Doctor Strange's 5th skill, where it resets all of his skills to cooldown, and then it sets them all to, you know, refreshing 1 second cooldowns. Invincibility, guaranteed targeting is the guaranteed like iframe ignore that Daredevil has on his stage 30 boss for Shadowland. That's where you'll find it. Accumulated HP recovery, this is from Jean Grey's 3rd skill. I believe she's the only character in the game that has it. It's a very potent HP. She recovers a base amount, and then as you do more damage to her, she heals for more. So it's basically like, it's so hard to kill her when she activates this skill. Increased damage to superheroes, like increased damage dealt and decreased damage received. This is the same thing as the sword ones from before. Give power, what the hell that means, acquires the following effect for a number of seconds. I want you to give power, please. Give me some free crystals. That's the power you should give me. Entice, we know, is like Luna Snow's 4th skill. This is an interesting one. We start to see skills that you can really pinpoint when they were introduced into the game. So this recharge seal is, of course, from Infinity War. This is Iron Man's recharge shield. And then they created additional stats and additional buffs in case they ever want to use it for characters that create a refreshing physical shield or a refreshing energy shield. So it's really cool that they created this effect for Iron Man, and then they created other variations of it for potential future use. Fracture, this would be a little bit after Infinity War, when we got the Deadpool update and we got Strife that introduced Fracture, that also introduced Incapacitation. The next update after that, we got Master Mold, so we got Brainwash, so you can hit both allies and enemies, so you can literally track the updates for when these were added. Adaptation, a chance to become immune to the greatest element. This is Sentinel's passive, so again, you can see exactly where this is coming from. Double crit, this is the 30% chance to increase your critical damage by 100% on a critical attack. This was January 2019 when Victorious was introduced into the game with the double crit. Increased max HP. Appearance, this is the Doctor Doom thing. Elasticity, this is the Mr. Fantastic thing. This is a cool one. Consume, really super weird, some Vor stuff. Recovers HP when defeating an enemy. We've never seen this in the game before. No character has this, whatever, but it's pretty cool. Increases stats relative to HP loss. This is very similar to the other effect that I was talking about that Hulk should have. We should absolutely have this on Hulk and other characters. We've got the endgame team suit stuff. We've got the Jubilee energy plasmoid stuff. Condensed power. This, I believe, is also Hydro Man. This is the deducting a stack if burned. That's exactly what that is. I don't know what this one is. Guard break, ignore dodge, crit damage. I think this is a buff for the CTP of Veteran, I believe. Crit rate dodge, this is the CTP of Rage. All attack, all defense. I'm not exactly sure. This heart one I know for sure is regen because I've seen it a lot. Moving over to the second last one, we have increased damage relative to dodge and crit. Of course, that's Rage. The super shield is regen. The ignore boss damage is rage. We've got a bunch more basic like stat boosts that, you know, I think maybe they made new icons. I'm not exactly sure, but these are just regular flat stat increases. Nothing too interesting or nothing too kind of surprising. You have Alliance Conquest buffs and Alliance Conquest bomb effects. Cut time, which is immune to time freezing. Some world bosses have this. Adam Warlock has this. And here's where we get to old World Boss Ultimate effects. Some of you guys might not remember this, but the original World Boss Ultimate, it had 5 stages. Stage 1 was pretty easy. Stage 5 was literally impossible for almost all players. And they had effects like this. Buff removed when tagging out. So all of the buffs that your character had when you tagged out, you would lose them, including leadership buffs. So you basically could not tag out. You had to play the character in the leadership slot, or you had to, you know, create a team that you could switch and they could still do enough damage, but it was very difficult. Co-op skill increased each time it's used. This was also hard because you would get fewer and fewer co-op skills every time you used it. Like the cooldown would keep getting higher and higher after each usage. Force tag out when attacked. This was super annoying. The Cull Obsidian, the Black Dwarf World Boss Ultimate had this, so you would be fighting him with Sharon Rogers. He would hit you and do damage. It would tag out in the middle of your skill while you're trying to time your proc, and it would switch to Coulson, and then Coulson dies immediately. It was so annoying. Cooldown tag out is increased every time you used. This was also annoying. So you tag out in a world boss fight, and it's like an 8-second timer. Every time you tagged out, it would get higher and higher. So, you know, if you tagged out 4 or 5 times, you'd have like a 30-second cooldown before you could tag out again. It was super annoying. You got some weird fear stuff. Cooldown is increased every time a skill is used. This was also really annoying for World Boss Ultimate. Your skills would raise their cooldown every time you used them, even if you had max skill cooldown. It was awful. Periodic stunning, I don't think we've seen this before, but that sounds really scary. Some sort of weaken, which lowers your stats as the battle goes on. Some sort of surge. Oh yeah, no, I remember surge. Sorry, I looked at the icon, I didn't remember it. This was the super giant stage where you couldn't do damage. The received damage was reduced when you were attacking if you were not summoned. So your attacks would do like 1 damage, but your summons, like Loki summons or Scarlet Witch's summons, would do full effect. Summoned characters have increased attack defense and are immune to fear. That was pretty interesting. Some resistances to regular physical attacks, but then normal damage against, and that's why there's a flame in the middle, normal damage from elemental attacks. So this was the old Ebony Maw World Boss Ultimate, but it's very similar. It's basically like the new World Boss Ebony Maw, where physical attacks don't do any damage, but elemental attacks do. Chance to summon the Black Order. This was again Thanos, the old Thanos World Boss Ultimate. While he was attacking you, if he hit you, there was a chance for some of the other Black Order members to jump in and do additional attacks. It made the stage very, very hard. Again, I don't know what the hell an Awaken is. This all attack, all defense stacking is a new one, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And then these are just all attack, all defense, and then resistances, stacking, ignoring immunity. These are the brand new ones that were introduced with this update, in addition to ignoring immunity paralysis and ignoring immunity all defense down, which has been a nightmare for characters like Wolverine, Spider-Man, etc. So damn, that is, I want to say hundreds, I don't know how many, but hundreds of buffs have been explained. If you have any other specific questions about buffs that you don't understand, that you want to know about, hit me up in the comments down below, like ask me, hey, number 219, can you explain that one a little bit more? Or perhaps number 13002, could you explain that one a little bit more? And I'll do my best to help you out. Thank you again so much one more time to Pink Chode, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again later today. Take care.